Hey there, Flux here, and I updated the Magic the Gathering Deck Maker and Playtable. Now, the changes to the Playtable are pretty simple. This Playtable now supports decks that are not called deck as long as they are tagged as deck in lowercase. Now, this is different from the original Playtable because originally I set this up to support Ukulop's original deck maker system, and that specifically generated decks that are called deck and are not tagged as deck. This is why I set up the way I did, because back in the day I didn't have control over the deck. Now that I'm basically generating my own decks, I can add some more detection to give you control over some extra stuff. Because the reason we updated this is that here you can now name your deck. So for example, if I name this deck Glunch, if I save it then to the inventory, the deck is going to be in the inventory labeled as Glunch rather than being labeled deck. Now, another thing that I added is this little speed button here. It goes from speed save to give deck now. Now, to showcase like the difference in speed here is that if I paste it right now, you can see it's generating the cards one by one, and it pretty much generates a card every 0.2 seconds roughly. Now, the thing with that is that is a very safe speed. Regardless of like how your frame rate is or how your lag, this should always complete 100%, and it's relatively nice to look at. And it still does not take too long to just get through the entire thing. However, if we are going at unsafe speeds, we do get a deck in about like 2 seconds. So, that's also pretty neat. So now this does disable the visual when it's generating. However, it gets you the deck, and it gets you the deck fast. If you're planning to just use Moxfield to store your decks and then you just on-demand print them, I do suggest just using Give Deck now, because it'll just get you the deck instantly. It's like basically instantly. Now, one other difference in the play table now is that actually if I go over here and I put the card down, we can now actually put cards down like this, and if they still tap, you can put cards down like this, and they will still tap, and also the counter visuals on it will still function properly. So if I look from above, you can see that I can still enable the counter. This is set up so that, for example, you can do stuff like flip the card over and have it manifested, and now you can still have them. Now, one other thing that you might have noticed in the new deck system is that if I open this up, you can see all of the planes have been generated. It didn't just generate individual, like one single plane. It actually made duplicates of every card that needs duplicates. Same for like the forests. Now, originally this wasn't the case because originally, again, the system worked by using sprite sheets. So having duplicate cards on sprite sheets was actually less VRAM efficient. Now that we're actually having this done through an API with like individual PNG stored on the server, that's no longer a consideration I need to make. Another thing that updated here that is very different from how it used to be is that at some point, I don't know at what point, but at some point there was a bug in the generator. I don't know when it happened, but essentially these decks here have a bug where if you look inside of them, they will actually at some times have all their cards. Now this one doesn't have the issue, but some of them do, where they just have every single card visible inside of it. And with this update, I basically fixed that. So there will only ever be 2 cards actually visible, and the inner cards essentially are hidden entirely, so you don't actually see them. This obviously is better for performance because you're not rendering all cards that you don't need at all times. But yeah, that is pretty much it. The final thing I'm going to do is I'm going to once more generate the Glunch deck. And I'm going to quickly show you how to use the deck real quick. So we're going to just quickly grab a deck. We're going to grab the top card and put it... Well, we're going to keep Glunch on top because we're just going to put him in the command zone. So I'm going to put the deck in the library. I'm going to draw the top card, which is Glunch, our commander. I'm going to put him over in the command zone. Then we're going to click shuffle on the side. There's a shuffle button on the side. You can't see the shuffle button on cameras, which is to support, camera play on stuff like Spell Table. However, you can violently see the entire deck vibrate every time you shuffle. This is so even though they can't see the shuffle visual, it's still very obvious when you do shuffle. Then, to draw our 7 for starting, we can either physically draw the cards with a laser, or we can press the draw button here. And one more. So now that we have our 7, that's it. We have started the match. Now all we now do is we play a land, and we tap it for mana if we need to cast something, and then we pass turn. If you lose life, there is 2 buttons over here. If I enable the lasers, there's 2 buttons here that you can't see on camera again that make you gain life or lose life. And then finally, you may have seen this little mana tracker. Now, this tracker, I made because I needed a mana tracker. It's not made very intuitively, but the way it works basically is you point your laser at the top of the icon to add mana, and at the bottom of the icon to remove mana. And you just click. Now, you can modify these to actually only have specifically the mana that you're specifically trying to keep track of, but it is not made in a pretty way. I still need to rework these at some point, because currently it's split into 2 different folders with 2 aligners essentially. So you have your mana symbol buttons and you have your actual trackers. So in order to properly get rid of them, you'd have to delete the correct symbols here, and then delete the correct numbers here. And then we delete the last one here and here to get rid of the colorless / snow colored mana. And then here we have only black, red, and green. But yeah, that is everything that is to say really about the system. We support manifesting now. One thing I'm still wanting to add in the future is just the ability to just keep the top card revealed. Currently, it's a bit janky. What you can do, what I suggest currently doing, is just take the top card off and put it to the side of the deck. Another thing I want to add is just a zone here that when you put a card over here, it'll inject it to the bottom of the deck, so you don't have to pick up the deck, then pick up the card, and then put the card at the bottom. Technically speaking, you can just put it beneath the table and it'll work, but that's not as intuitive as just having a zone that says to bottom here or on the side somewhere. But yeah, I hope you like these updates, and if you like the video, like it. If you have any questions, leave them down below. If you have suggestions for new features, leave them down below. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye.